Speaking about this almost inexplicable thing about the soul, and that is that we may try and ignore it, and some people do that quite successfully. But there is a level of the soul, the fifth level of the soul, the Chida Shabanefesh, it is called, that awakens when push comes to shove in almost every Jew. And that is that when a person, for example, is forced to, like we saw in the Inquisition and other places, when he's forced to say go against God, convert, worship idols, and that could even come with the punishment of death. Something deep within awakens, which is part of what the Tanya here explains, and that is that every one of us has that level that cannot be contaminated, that deep connection with God, that fifth level coming from the fifth level of the soul that is unbreakable. And the goal of obviously is to live with it at every moment, not just during the dire experiences of our lives. And that's what we've been speaking about. There was this sentence that he quoted that, any Jew converts demonstrates that he's not in essence Jewish, because if he was in essence Jewish, then he wouldn't be able to do so, as we've seen by so many. I don't know of any example like that, as we mentioned also, and every Gentile converts was not really a Gentile. Because he was always Jewish. That's what that fifth level of the soul is what made him reveal his Jewishness. Anyway, so we contemplated that last week. Let's continue here, top of page 101. Does anyone want to read?
I'll go for it this morning.
Please, per
All right.
favore.
One encounters remarkable individuals in every people and culture who, by dint of their efforts and spiritual ability, forge a connection with the Creator. The connection is not instinctive, springing from the strengths of their souls. It is rather the result of personal exertions, for which an appropriate reward is given. However, this bears no relation to the existence of a soul or holiness. A Jew's soul yearns naturally for godliness, without thought, without design. This holy soul's presence creates an essential different sort of person in whom this soul works independently of the person's deeds and strivings.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So there are people who achieve great spiritual heights because of their own exertion and because of their own work, and we know people like that in almost every field of life. But then that's one category. And I would say that according to Kabbalah, this is called the Taruta Diletata, which means the awakening from below. People have to work on themselves. By the way, it's interesting. I was just reading this yesterday, but just to connect it to the parsha of yesterday, it's quite fascinating. God tells us to donate to the tabernacle 3 times in the opening verses. V'yikhuli teruma, God says, take for me a teruma, and then he says, Kol asher yidevenu libo tikhu teruamati. Then anyone whose heart is open should bring teruma, and then there's another commandment of teruma, and the Kabbalists explain that it's actually 3 levels of donation which come in any type of spiritual journey, which is what we're speaking about here. The first one is an awakening from above. God tells us, "Veikhuli teruma, give me a donation, or take for me a donation." And then, with that awakening, we are awakened below, and then our heart opens up, and then we want to give. And then there's that ultimate connection or ultimate donation in which it's not just God and it's not just us, but it's God and us together. And that's the third teruma. What I mean to say, and this is really what the Tanya is saying here, is that there are 3 types of refinement, of really ensuring that that soul is what leads us, what that fifth level of the soul is not hidden, but it's what eventually can guide us. The first type is just spiritual awakening. Some people experience that, right? You wake up in the morning and you spiritually awaken. You go to the Western Wall and you spiritually awaken. You go to Yom Kippur service and you spiritually awaken. You don't work for it much, but it was something from above. But that usually doesn't last. That usually comes and goes very quickly. So you have to work on yourself. And that's that spiritual refinement that we're speaking about here, of people who really work on themselves. But sometimes that spiritual refinement can also be detached from God. Why? Because it's very much connected to you. You understand that you have to refine yourself. You understand that your ego is getting in your way. So you do it not for God, you do it for you, for your life, for your betterment, for your spiritual elevation. By the way, a lot of many people who deal with their own demons, with therapy and all sorts of spiritual exercises, I commend them. But very often it's very me oriented, it's very ego oriented. They do it for themselves. And this is where the third type of teruma has to come. And this is the ultimate, which is what we're speaking about. That I understand that my spiritual journey is not for me. I don't care whether it benefits my life or not. I know it will. I'm sure it will. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is really so that I can be a conduit for God in this world. I don't do it just so that I can have peace of mind, so that I can sleep better, so that I can be more attentive, more present. All that is very good. But the only reason I'm doing it is so that I can fulfill the mission for which I was sent by God to this world. I can be his conduit. And then whether I have tranquility, peace of mind, good health, good emotional health with that refinement or not, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I want. Some people work on themselves and they'll, you know, a lot of these seminars and so on promise peace of mind, serenity, more presence of mind, more presence of spirit. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Look at Jacob in the Torah. He worked on himself time and time again. He never had a moment of peace. But he didn't care because he didn't do it for himself. He did it for God to be that conduit. And that's really the ultimate. And this is what really this is speaking about, that this connection is not instinctive, springing from the strength of their souls. Yes, it comes with it. But that ultimate connection is simply because I want to be with God and I want to be the conduit to his light, to his mission, to his glory, as we say in Tehillim. That's the only goal. So there's three levels, I would say. First one comes and goes. That's spiritual awakening. Many people experience that. But if you don't retain that with work, with personal work, it goes very quickly. The second one is working on yourself, which I commend people to do that. But that can be very selfish. The third one is really the ideal. The third level is when I work on myself, not so that I can achieve any personal benefits, even though they may come with a package, but I work on myself simply because I want to be God's conduit. And then I understand sometimes it will come with peace of mind, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will come with benefits, sometimes it won't. It doesn't matter. I'm doing this for God, to be my full divine self, my divine conduit. And this is really what the goal of the Benoni is. And that's where the fifth level of the soul that we're speaking about also has to come into play. The fifth level of the soul is connected to God, wants to be that conduit. But again, that comes with tremendous work, and it comes with rewiring our goal from selfish to selfless, from me-oriented to God-oriented, from being a conduit for my benefits to being a conduit for God's benefits. That's the big difference. Okay, I don't want to be the only one monologuing, so feel free to share any thoughts, any disagreements, any comments. But otherwise, we can continue.
Even the most worthless of worthless men and the sinners of Israel are thus endowed at the time of marital union with, at any rate, a nefesh of the nefesh of Malchut.
The commentary.
Yeah.
The commentary. You have it? You're the most
Yes.
worthless man and the sinners of Israel. Go for
The
it.
most worthless of worthless men and the sinners of Israel are neither identical nor necessarily coexistent facets of the same person. The most worthless of worthless men is an airhead. The sinner of Israel is a rasha. The former has a lowly soul. The latter soul may be lofty, and its greatness might in fact directly cause this transgressive behavior. Big souls demand big solutions, and on occasion, whether due to one's background or for other reasons, a person who cannot find the answers in sanctity may direct his formidable energies to the Sitra Ahra, perhaps out of spite or perhaps in search of what he could not find in sanctity. At any rate, the individual discussed here may be a combination of the two, the most worthless of worthless and a sinner to boot. He transgresses not only out of frivolity, but with deliberation and intention.
Right. I think that this is a beautiful distinction. Worthless of worthless is not the same as sinners of Israel. Worthless are people who, in essence, don't have much to contribute. They're worthless. They're smaller people. There's people like that. That's how God created them. Why and how it's on. That's not our business. But then you have the sinners of Israel. It reminds me of that phrase from the tractate of Sukkah in the Talmud that says, "Kol gadol mechavero yitzro gadol himeno." That whoever is greater than his friend, he has a greater evil inclination. The greater you are, the greater your evil inclination. And the Talmud tells the story, if I recall correctly, there of one of the greatest sages who saw this couple in love and they were holding hands in the street, and he decided to follow them. And in the end, this couple had to part ways. And they parted ways without kissing, without hugging, or anything like that. And he became very despondent. This sage that saw this couple in love saying goodbye to each other without any romantic element to their goodbye. And he went to the house of study where he usually was, and they found him despondent and asked him, "Why are you so despondent?" And he said, "Because I saw this couple saying goodbye, and if I was the man, I would have kissed and hugged and done all these romantic things with my wife or with my girlfriend, whoever it was. And this man didn't do anything, like he controlled himself in public. It was quite dignifying and seems to be on a much higher level than me." So they told the sage, "Don't worry, it's because you're great that you have a greater Yetzer Hara, that you have a greater evil inclination. The greater you are, the greater your evil inclination is." We see that in education. It's, children who are rebellious are the ones with the greater potential. They just have such a great soul, such great energy that they are not channeling it right. But if they were able to channel that rebellion into construction, into something positive, they would really achieve the greatest of greats. And every educator knows that. And that's what the sinners of Israel really are referring to. It's not the worthless of worthless. Those are the petty people. These are people, actually, sinners of Israel, with tremendous potential, with the greatest evil inclination. But it's an indication, again, of their inherent greatness, that they just don't know how to channel that greatness, and therefore they become the sinners of Israel. One of the other great Talmudic stories is the story of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish and Bar Yochanan, two great Talmudic sages of the second century who truly transformed Jewish life in so many ways in Babylon and in Israel and then in Babylon. But the teachings are all over the Talmud. This was a teacher and a student who were very, very close to one another. Rabbi Yochanan was the student of Reish Lakish. How did Reish Lakish become Rabbi Yochanan's devout student? They have a very special relationship. A lot of stories are coming to mind. But how did Reish Lakish become his student? It's simply because Reish Lakish was a big bandit, a very big bandit. He was the head of the mafia of the day. And one day Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in a river and he sees Reish Lakish, this head of the mafia, jumping from one side of the river to the other with tremendous might, a feat that could barely be achieved by anyone. So he tells Reish Lakish, "Why, you have such strength. Cheilcha leoraita. Your strength should be channeled to Torah. Imagine you take all this strength and you channel it to Torah. Cheilcha leoraita." And Reish Lakish says, "Fine, I'm willing to consider, but what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me?" Now, Rabbi Yochanan was very handsome. And he said, "Look, I have a sister who's more beautiful than I am. I'll convince her to marry you." And Reish Lakish says, "Fine." And he really went and he studied under Rabbi Yochanan, and he became one of the greatest of the greats. because Rabbi Yochanan, as the ultimate educator, saw this head of the mafia, the most rebellious man, with tremendous strength. And he said to himself, why? Imagine I could transform this strength or channel it leoraita, towards Torah, which he did. He could become one of the, and he did. And eventually he did marry, they became brother-in-laws because he married Rabbi Shlakish married Rabbi Yochanan's sister. And in fact, the story goes that Reish Lakish went back to that riverside and he went and he tried to jump again, as he did at the very beginning when they first met, from one side of the river to the other, and he wasn't able to.
Mm.
And this is when the Talmud says, you see, that the Torah mateshet kocha shel adam. Torah weakens the physical strength of a person. If you know really how to exalt yourself in Torah, then learning Torah is not something easy because you have to channel all your strength into it. It's it's not just debating like Talmud, but it's really putting your entire presence of mind, presence of spirit, presence of body even into the learning. Anyway, so Reish Lakish couldn't do it, but you see, Rabbi Yochanan's vision, and that's the beauty of the story here, is that he saw maybe not the worthless of worthless. That's not who Reish Lakish was. He saw a sinner of Israel, the head of the mafia, and he said to him, look, if you could only channel your strength, you have such a big evil inclination. Imagine turning all of the strength that it gives you into good. Could be one of the greatest of the greats. And that really happened. By the way, the end of this story is tragic, just to conclude the story here. But Reish Lakish was once participating in one of those classes of Rabbi Yochanan, and they were speaking about whether a type of weapon can become impure. The general rule is that a finished product can become impure. And they weren't sure whether this type of arrow was considered finished and therefore could become impure or not. And then Rabbi Yochanan turns to Reish Lakish and says to him, Reish Lakish, you were a bandit. You would know. Is this arrow considered finished or not? And Reish Lakish got so offended. He said, this is my past. Why are you bringing it up? This is not me anymore. And he got so offended that he died from that hurt.
Mm.
Rabbi Yochanan was so offended that he offended his student that he died from that hurt.
Wow.
That's how deeply connected they were.
Wow.
And the Rambam, and according to Jewish law, also deducts a very powerful law from this, and that is that someone who did teshuvah, someone who came from a questionable or even from a negative past and did teshuvah, that past is not a part of that person anymore. One is not allowed, it's prohibited to bring that past up to that person because it's not him anymore. And look what it calls Reish Lakish. It's really a strong prohibition. That you can't say to a person, I remember when you acted this way or that way, or even small things. I remember when you transgressed the Shabbat or whatever it may be. You're not allowed to bring back a past that a person did teshuvah. But going back, Rabbi Yochanan, all the greats knew that whoever is greater than the other has a greater evil inclination, and it's just a question of channeling it. I wish we could do that in education. Our own children, with our own students, or with our neighbors even. It's specifically the people that are problematic that have the greatest potential. Now, yes, sometimes it takes a lot of work. Sometimes it seems almost impossible. But still, it's, Lubavitch Rebbe, I think one of his greatest traits was exactly that he saw the potential and he knew. There's a great story about this mother who brought her rebellious child to the Lubavitch Rebbe. He was young. And they're meeting there in a private audience with the Rebbe, and the mother says, I don't know what to do with my son here. And the Rebbe asks him, so tell me, are you doing well in school? This child says, no, I hate school. The Rebbe says, do you like any of your teachers? No, I hate all my teachers. And do you have any good grades, any class at least that you do? No, nothing. I hate school, I told you. And the Rebbe smiles and he tells the mother, he says, you see, no matter how many questions you ask, this child, he has a very good attribute. He'll always tell the truth. Always. So the Rebbe then encouraged the mother then to expand his attribute of truth. And maybe he could be a good judge one day. Maybe he could be a good advocate for social justice one day. Look how much power he has behind that truth. That's how we do it. That's how educators need to do it. Yeah. Anyway, those are the sinners of Israel, which that really have tremendous potential, and that's why they're different than the worthless of worthless. Any other comments, ideas, disagreements? There's a tremendous story that also of the Lubavitch that this mother brought her child. The Rebbe would give. I'm astounded how much attention the Rebbe would give children all the time. I was a recipient of visited the Rebbe 3 times in my youth, and without those visits, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. That made an indelible impact on me. But one of the things that did is that the Rebbe would give us coins to put to tzedakah. And he would stop everything and take out, he always had coins in his pocket and give it to children. But there's a great story I read not long ago that this mother also brought her child to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave this child a coin, and the child threw the coin at the Rebbe, and then he gives her another coin, and he throws this coin at the Rebbe. The mother's very embarrassed; she doesn't know what to do. And the Rebbe said, "Look, wow, he has such a good trait. You see, you can't buy him with money. You can't buy him with money." So, it's the ability to see beyond the evil inclination and to see that tremendous strength that those seemingly rebellious children have. That really points to what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here. Sinners of Israel really could be the greatest of Israel. Just have to channel them in the right way.